Hi there, I'm Christina Richmond with Richmond Advisory Group, and I am here to chat with the fascinating John Fokker from Trellix, and he leads the threat intelligence research for Trellix. They just have put out their threat report on June 11th, and there's some great content in there. So, welcome, John.
Thank you, Christina. Happy to be here.
So
Always
nice.
lovely to chat.
It is always so fun to chat with you. So let's just dive right in. Give us a super quick, where did you get the data? How do you analyze it kind of sense? And how long? What's the time frame?
So yeah, great. The time frame is Q4 and Q1 that we took. And obviously, as Trellix, that we're a vendor, we have a tremendous amount of sensors all over the globe, hundreds of millions from endpoint, network, email. And what we basically do with this report is we collect all telemetry from those sensors. So any malicious detections that we have, and we'll go through all those results. We scrub it, we analyze it, we try to take out any false positives and anything, and distill it into certain topics of interest, like could be APT, ransomware, and all these things that you see in the report right now. Additionally, what we do with the reporting as well is like we're very aware that we have detections, but there's also stuff that we don't see. So one of the things that I'm very proud of that the team does is we're constantly trying to find our blind spots and fill those gaps. So we also look at the reporting that comes out in the industry and we match that to things that we see on our sensors, as well as that we do our own investigations in the underground and grab telemetry or grab intelligence from there, and all crafted all in this nice report that we have launched a couple of days ago.
So basically, it's 6 months of data, and I think you've done that historically with your other reports, right? You come
Correct,
out at
correct,
six
yes.
months with a threat report, and it's a great report. I really, I like the dynamic charts that you have in it, so you can click on something and remove a threat actor, right? I like that. I like to play with data. It's very
I
well
think it's
written.
cool too.
Do you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. I think it's cool too. I just wanted to say, like, I did no credit, but that's all our creative team. So our creative team has done a phenomenal job, and I'm sure to pass on this kudos to them.
Well, good. It makes it more interactive, which I like. I think it keeps people's interest and attention. So, speaking of interest and attention, there were about four really top of mind takeaways that I think we want to get to today. The first one is the significant fluctuation in APT and nation state actors. So, I was thinking, wow, it's always China and Russia on top. So, what's different? And I'd love you to kind of dive into that a little deeper so that I can understand it better.
Yes, so when we look at APT sandworm, that's one that we've actually detected quite a bit in the last 6 months. So their
And that's
activity is closely
Russian
linked.
or that's Russian or
Sorry?
Chinese? That's Russian or Chinese?
That is, well, yeah, yeah, that's an APT group that we link to the Russian government. So
Mm.
it's I have to be very specific about how we phrase it because it's we're not
Yeah,
in the formal attribution because we're looking at technical indicators and technical attribution to a APT group, but it is common knowledge and multiple reporting is out there, including the government, that links this APT group to have a relationship to the Russian administration. And we see, actually, speaking of which, this more intense or the amount of activity that we've noticed is closely linked to what is going on in the world and specifically in Ukraine. Because APT Sandworm is known for launching very much disruptive attacks, and it's probably no secret that we have a lot of networks in Ukraine that we protect. So we see a lot of activity coming in to those networks, and we
so
luckily defend against those.
so that makes sense to me. And then there are other Russian APTs that I think are more information gathering. Is that right?
Yes, so predominantly that's APT 29 or was it Midnight Blizzard for other people. They're more linked to a different department within the
Mm.
Russian administration. They're more focused on
Got it.
intelligence
Got it.
gathering. We
And
know
then
them from the last, oh, sorry, we know them from the last 6 months where they attacked a large cloud vendor. Or things that we see as well is that they go after, through spear phishing attacks, after many governments actually in Europe, West or in Eastern Europe and Western Europe to
mm,
get information on the political system.
got it. On the Chinese side, I would guess, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but I would guess that it is much more looking for intellectual property, much more sort of gathering intelligence. That's what I think of when I think of Chinese attacks. And again, the attribution, you have to be careful around that, and I get that. Am I right, or is there more? Is there also some disruption that occurs with Chinese attacks?
Well, that's an excellent question and an excellent observation because, yeah, the rule of thumb or what we most often see is that, like, the APT groups that we know about is mostly intelligence gathering. However, there's a group that we've highlighted in this report that stands out, and the group that we highlight is Volt Typhoon, which we also link to the Chinese administration. This threat group is slightly different because their targeting is also focused on critical infrastructure. And it's not necessarily that they try to penetrate critical infrastructure to gain intellectual property or to steal that or to gain knowledge. But one of actually the team's hypothesis is that they plant themselves in those networks to have an ability to disrupt. So it's not really an attack in a way that it's actively trying to disrupt, but gaining a foothold that in the event that it's needed, they can cause disruption. And what
That's
stands
very
out with them
interesting.
is that, yeah, it's a very interesting, and they leverage a lot of living off the land tools, and they try to penetrate a lot of edge devices. So this is slightly different from the more common TTPs that we see with a lot of the more conventional Chinese linked APT groups.
Cool. Not cool in a good way, but interesting, I guess I should say. You know,
Yeah.
let's jump to the EDR killers information that you have in the report because it was only a matter of time that somebody would be able to figure out how to remove or dent some of the great detection that we've found with EDR tools. And I know
hmm
there's some link to ransomware around that. So, what are you seeing? And I think you first saw this occur like January of this year. Is that right?
Well, somewhat. So EDR termination tools or killers are not necessarily new. We see an insurgence or it's being adopted more. This goes hand in hand with the industry adoption of EDR tools. So
Mm.
we see threat actors trying to circumvent this because I can remember back even on the ransomware act, as you said, like years back or a couple of years back when EDR first made its entry. Um, we've overheard conversations between threat actors on the underground saying like, hey, if there's any of these EDRs installed, forget it. You're not going to be able to move through the network unseen and all that stuff. So EDR is most definitely very, very good at what it does, and threat actors don't like it. So they had AV killers, so the antivirus killers or things to turn off the AV. And now you see that moving into the EDR space that they're trying to turn off the EDR. The case and one of the ransomware cases is the donut ransomware group that we saw, but actually most recently QLin, that's actually not too long ago, I think that's a couple of weeks ago, they've been leveraging, and that the QLim actually has been leveraging the tooling that we discuss in the report. But the part that we highlight in the report is actually something different because the EDR killer that we mentioned got launched or got presented in the underground for sale, I believe, in September last year. However, January of this year, we detected this on some highly sensitive networks that were or they tried to attack it. They tried to turn off the EDR in three different networks that were actually tied in to the Ukraine, well, either Ukraine government or they were supporting Ukraine in some way. And it was telecom communications, utilities, and a government network. So that shows us that threat actors and probably also the nation state actors are taking a look at EDR evasion or termination tools to turn this off and to be able to launch their attacks unseen.
Thank you for that. That's it's interesting to me how this has evolved and how the AV killers now we have EDR killers and how of course it's associated with what we're seeing in the Ukraine as well. I think we should probably jump to the last piece, which is Gen AI. It's top of mind for everybody. Oh, AI is going to take over the world. The attackers are going to use it to do really bad things. And yeah, they're starting to use it. But what's the truth behind all of that?
Yeah, you touch upon a point that's close to heart. when Gen AI, or actually when OpenAI presented like their Chat GPT and the first like well, large scale adoption of LLMs, I kind of envision it. It was like we're all on a running track, and we're all at the start line, and it's like the cyber criminals are next to us as vendors, users, anyone. Everybody was in the same boat, even legislation. So we're all taking off and going on this AI journey, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And we do see, like in the industry, like us as well, we have Trellix Wise that we launched during RSA. We're all adopting to Gen AI because it has phenomenal capabilities. What is the case is though that very early on, people are what I'm always a little bit I'm not always agreeing with fear mongering when it comes to like Gen AI will help us, but we should not launch only Gen AI because the cyber criminals are doing it. That's not the reason why. There's just so much advantage, and there's already an alert overflow for a lot of our customers or a lot of practitioners, security practitioners in general, that cannot handle the amount of alerts and the signals that come in from all the different platforms. So that's where it plays a role. However, when we look at the flip side, or like the dark side of innovation, as we like to call it, yes, we do see threat actors leveraging Gen AI. They take note. They're developers. They like to innovate as well. So we saw phishing emails. Well, they're not really written with spelling errors anymore. They craft them really well. But what we see is that they launch. One of the things we saw is that in their communication channel through Jabber, that's one of their primary communication channels, they actually embedded an AI or Chat GPT function to help with communication. And that's interesting to see as well for us. We're not actually not sure if this is on some kind of information gathering exercise where threat actors are leveraging that API key and then just putting in their prompts, and somebody else at the other side is just collecting information. But we see it on Gen AI adoption also an information stealer. So we see it where they build it in an info stealer to create more unique signatures, to be more dynamic, as well as like things that we do in the industry to manage or to monitor bots, botnets, or information stealers. We try to infect ourselves with a fake system and then try to gather as much info as we can, find out where the command and control server infrastructure is, and work our way up. So threat actors know that we do this. So they use Gen AI to spot the researchers. So that's functionalities that we see being implemented by threat actors. So that's, yeah, it is a cat and mouse game. So that it's always going to happen.
It's always going to be a cat and mouse. And what's good to hear is that, you know, they're still going to take the path of least resistance, right? And they're not going to use a tool that is beyond their capabilities quite yet. We haven't reached the singularity. The bots haven't taken over. And humans are very much the first point of defense, right? So
luckily they are.
luckily, so I'm glad to hear a little bit about Gen AI. I think that's all the time we have. So I just want to really urge people to take a look at the report. There's a lot more detail on everything we talked about. Great information from John and the team at Trellix. And there's a lot more detail on all the threat actors and the threat vectors that we've discussed. So thank you so much for taking some time with me today, John. And it was really fun to talk with you again.
It's always a pleasure, Christina. And thank you so much.